Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you guys for participating in the Salt Management Lunchtime webinar. My name is Stephanie Newmer, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher here at the Interstate Commission on the Potomac River Basin. I'm going to be assisting with the behind-the-scenes coordination of this webinar, so feel free to use the chat option to contact me with any concerns or questions you might have regarding the technical side. I would like to ask each of you to please mute your microphone and turn off your webcams and only turn them on for when you are speaking. This helps us save bandwidth and ensure everyone gets a seamless webinar experience today. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the chat, which you can identify with the little speech bubble at the top. And panelists will then address all questions during the question and answer session after all of the presentations have concluded. This meeting will be recorded and later will be posted on the ICPRB YouTube page for future viewing. And if you experience any technical issues during the webinar, please ask for assistance in the chat and I will personally coordinate with you to resolve them. Again, please be sure to mute your microphones and turn off your webcams. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to hand it over and introduce you guys to Mike Nardolilli, our Executive Director here at the Interstate Commission on the Potomac River Basin.
Thank you. I am Mike Nardolilli, the Executive Director of ICPRB. ICPRB is a congressionally approved compact of all the jurisdictions in the Potomac River Basin, the Commonwealths of Virginia and Pennsylvania, the states of Maryland and West Virginia, and the District of Columbia. Founded in 1940, ICPRB has been a leader in the protection of the water resources of the Potomac River watershed and the coordination of the various stakeholders in the delivery of clean and abundant drinking water to the DC area. Thank you all for attending the ICPRB webinar today to learn and share about winter salt management of the Potomac River Basin. While we all acknowledge the need to keep our roads and sidewalks passable during winter weather events, using too much salt harms aquatic life and could jeopardize our use of the Potomac River as a source of drinking water. This event is being held as part of the implementation of the Potomac Basin Comprehensive Water Resources Plan, and we are pleased to present a panel of experts who will share information related to their organization's on-the-ground salt management activities in the Potomac Basin, followed by a question and answer session with the participants. This event is being funded by a grant from the United States Environmental Protection Agency under Section 106 of the Clean Water Act. So with that, I would like to turn the proceedings over to Dr. Heidi Maltz, the ICPRB Director of Program Operations. Heidi?
Thank you, Mike, and thank you all for joining us today. I'm Heidi Maltz, Director of Program Operations at ICPRB. So the purpose of today's panel is to bring together experts from a few different types of organizations to present practical, on-the-ground innovations, successes, and case studies from different areas of the Potomac Basin. So we have a great lineup of speakers for you today to discuss their organization's on-the-ground salt management activities, including the Maryland State Highway Administration, the City of Gaithersburg, Fairfax Water, and the Izaak Walton League. So each speaker is going to talk for about 10 minutes to highlight their activities, and then we'll move on to the next speaker. Because we have a full agenda scheduled, please type your questions in the chat box throughout the panel to get those questions in the queue. This will help us to make sure we have enough time for all of our speakers and to get to as many of your questions and comments as possible at the end. Carlington Wallace, the Associate Director for Water Resources at ICPRB, is going to be monitoring that chat box, and I'm going to check in with him periodically to see if there are any clarifying questions that we should handle between the speakers, but otherwise we're going to plan to hold off on all the questions until the end. And just by way of a heads up, I'm going to interrupt to give each speaker a 2-minute warning towards the end of their time to help keep us on track. So without further ado, let's get started with the panel. Up first, I'd like to introduce Scott Simons. He is Chief of the Highway Maintenance Division at the Maryland State Highway Administration. So Scott, welcome and thank you for being here. If you'd like to take it away, please, I see you've got your screen share up and proceed with your presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, you're coming through loud and clear.
Okay, cool. I'm not going to share my camera because A, I'm really not that photogenic, and B, I want to get right into my presentation. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Scott Simons. I work for the Maryland Department of Transportation State Highway Administration. I have been with the organization for going on 23 years and some change. I've worked in maintenance my whole career, started at the ground up driving a plow truck. I won't claim that I know everything about our winter salt management and winter maintenance, but I've got a little bit of a background, and my jobs over the last 6 to 8 years have really kind of like put me in the trenches with our people and all of the environmental agencies within Maryland, who we have very good partnerships with. So my presentation today is I'm gonna try to stay as high level as I can, and because I know I have a limited amount of time, and I know I'm not going to get to everything, so I'm gonna try to speak as fast as I can, but try not to miss anything. So just bear with me as I go along. So I just want to talk about state highway real quick. We our assets, like our maintenance assets, we've got about 28 maintenance shops spread across 7 districts across the state. We maintain 17,373 lane miles, 5,206 center line miles. Our roads see almost 40 billion annual vehicle miles of travel. So we have a lot of traffic on a little bit of roads. So we got our hands cut out, or our work cut out for us when we do winter maintenance. As you can see, that the average daily traffics on our levels of roadway are fairly high too. We have about 1,100 maintenance shop employees. 740 of those are field employees. Now that number 740, I want you to remember that number throughout my presentation. 110 of those are managers, 200 admin staff, about 50 winter volunteers, 600 plus minus SHA dump trucks, and we also have access and on contract to 2,200 pieces of hired equipment to help maintain those 17,000 lane miles. Our winter budget is $71 million. We've got about 385,000 tons of rock salt at our disposal and 1.7 million gallons of salt brine storage. Okay, so our salt management initiatives and directives and plan all start right here with the salt management plan. It's an actual document that's online. It's accessible through the internet. It's a document that was created due to legislation passed in 2011. It's a document that was written and created, and the way it was written is it's actually user friendly. It can actually, I'm not going to use the word plagiarize, but local agencies and municipalities can use it to create their own salt management plans. It's updated yearly by October 1st, because that's required per the legislation that was passed in 2011. And it explains in very great detail SHA's best management practices when it comes to the training of our employees and our contract forces, the environmental impacts the road salt has, our equipment usage, new technology implementation, the data analysis, and how we grade ourselves with our level of service, and a ton of other things. It's a really good document. It's fairly in-depth and it's pretty long, and I'll send the link to the group after the meeting's done so you can go. And I just finished updating it this October, so everything's current that's in there. That's in there now is current. So one of the things that we've done over the last 3 years is we've actually gone out and updated all of our brine makers. We're using a automated brine maker now. 10 of the 14 have been completely installed and are fully operational. Salt brine has become a huge staple in what we do. We not only use it for anti-icing prior to an event, but we have 42 roads right now across the state that we do what's called a direct liquid application, where we use salt brine strictly with no granular salt during winter operations while it's snowing. And it's a good thing, because if applied at the right gallons per lane mile, we actually cut our usage rate per lane mile down to about 25% of what it would be with rock salt. Now, everybody says that's all great, fine, and dandy. Why don't you do it more? Well, the problem is you've got to have the water resources, you've got to have the storage capacity and things of that nature. So we make the most of what we have from our making capabilities, our water resources, and our storage capacity to use it every storm as much as we can. We bought these makers so that we could replenish not only after the storm, but actually while the storm's going on, to actually keep up with the direct liquid applications and the anti-icing that happens out there. These things are great because they're highly efficient. They can be controlled from anywhere with a cell signal and a tablet. They can continuously make brine while filling the trucks that are on site. Very, very good tool, but they are finicky. So you have to have someone within your operations that can understand the equipment, and they'd be able to make repairs on the fly and things like that. But huge tool for us, and it's making great strides. This is just one of the installs that we did, just some pictures. It has an automated clean out, so all of the particulates and any of the fines that don't get used get cleaned out while it's making just some high level pictures. One of the things that we've also done is we've converted about 80% of our fleet to a hybrid plow blade. Now, we got away from the carbide steel blades a couple of years ago in a lot of the places where we don't get hard pack, and they're hybrid blades that are made from rubber with ceramic inserts. And we found that our drivers actually like them better, because they remove more snow from the roadway. They also mold to the rutting in the roadway or the crown of the road, so you can remove more snow and you're not getting just a rigid edge on a like a fulcrum. Less driver fatigue from the reduced road noise and vibration from the steel blade riding. And they actually prolong the life of your line striping and pavement marking because they're not like, you don't have a steel blade digging constantly trying to plow off snow. So that's another thing that helps. And they actually do remove more snow than the steel blades do, which if you remove more snow off the roads, you need less salt. You need less salt to treat what's left. So it's just a little tool that we've used. Another big thing that we've done is a lot of external partnering. We meet with elected officials all the time to discuss possible legislations pertaining to salt use. We've actually gone and presented to counties and municipalities over the last 3 to 5 years. We've actually helped 2 counties write their own salt management plans based off ours, but meeting their needs. We have a very good partnership with the Department of the Environment. They do site visits with us, in-house meetings. They actually incorporated parts of our salt management plan and our BMPs into the current MS4 permits that were released in April of 2020. And even DNR, we partner with them to do specific conductance monitoring on certain streams around the state, multiple stakeholder meetings. This is a chart that shows our resource usage data over the last 7 years. And I was going to go back even further than this, but when we actually started our salt reduction initiative back in 2013, 2014, the year prior, our salt usage in our pounds per lane mile per inch that we were using was up in the thousands. Federal Highway recommends 300 to 500 to actually get your job done based on severity of the storm and the type of roadway that you're actually working on. But so we were abusing it, and we knew we were, and no one was doing anything about it. So we self-consciously said there's something we need to do. So our office partnered with some of the districts, partnered with the MDE, and we started a training initiative, an internal training initiative program, to where our office would actually go around to the facilities every single winter and talk about the who, what, when, where, how, and why, and the impacts about not only the infrastructure, but the environment and the fiscal impacts and things of that nature about how we need to do our jobs better. And you can see that, and I'm using my cursor here, we were at 952 pounds back in 2013, 2014, and then we dropped to 817, and then we dropped to 614. Now there's a little asterisk there that says minus the blizzard data, because if you remember, Jonas came in 2015 and 2016, January 22nd of 2016. And whenever you get a large event like that, we use a multiplier in our equation of inches. But if you have a bunch of inches in an equation, it can throw the data out of whack. So it can create an outlier. So we removed the storm data from the blizzard, the data from the blizzard out of that year, because we would have been down in the 400s that year as for a reduction, but it wouldn't have told the whole story. So we removed that data from the process to make sure that we had an apples to apples comparison. So 614 that year, 430 the following year, 460. Now we're getting into that federal highway range of 300 to 500. We had a little jump up here to 561. Then 2 years ago, if you remember, we really didn't have a winter. But we got all the way down to 323 pounds. And then last year, we had a major jump. We doubled our salt usage. And I'm about to get into the reasons why. And another thing I want to say today is I'm all for salt reduction, but there's certain circumstances that may not allow it. And that kind of happened to us last year. And I want to show you why.
Heidi, 2 minutes remaining.
2 minutes. Oh my God, I'm not going to get through all of this. Okay, so here's salt statistics from each of our facilities, and this represents 2019 and 2020. The red bar represents the pounds per lane mile per inch of the usage rate in 1920, and then you can see where the orange bar shot up across the state last year. When we were looking at the data, we were like, we don't understand why. But if you look here at LaVale, they actually had a reduction. Kaiser's Ridge pretty much stayed the same, and Hagerstown actually had a reduction. But the rest of our shops, they had an increase in salt usage. And we were like, well, what happened? 26 of the 28 went up, and what happened? Well, when we started looking at things like this, we looked at traffic data, and then we realized, hey, COVID happened. Hey, people aren't driving as much. Hey, what do you need to make salt work on the road? You got to have traffic for it to actually work, for the rock salt to actually turn into a brine solution. People were teleworking more. Businesses, they were having groceries delivered. They were watching TV at home. They weren't going to the movies. The traffic reduction paired with the ice accumulations, when it ices, you can't plow. So you have to put something on the road to actually treat what's going on. And the ice accumulations last year were huge. So the traffic decreased with the ice increase, along with the colder temperatures. We needed to use more salt, but we didn't go back to the way we were, 8 years ago up in the 1000. So we actually did what we were supposed to do by not sacrificing public safety, but also applying the things that we've learned in the past, for the good of the environment. But did you remember those shops I showed, that LaVale, Hagerstown, and Kaiser's Ridge? They're actually all out in Western Maryland. In Western Maryland, if you look, their ice accumulations pretty much stayed the same. So their operations really didn't change, and they actually had a reduction. So to say that our process is actually working and we're making good decisions based off of the scenario that we're faced with, it's working. Here's one of the other reasons that we actually had some issues last year. We've hired 182 new operators since November of 2019. Now, before they come to us without a license, and we train them to get their CDL. And they have to go through a snow college and be certified before they can drive with us. So imagine throwing 182 new people into a truck where, remember earlier, I told you we only have 740 operators. That's roughly a 30 to 33% of our staff went into this past winter with no winter experience. So that was another reason that we saw our numbers go up. So that's why we reach out and go out and talk to our every year we go out and talk to our new employees, and we meet with them. We talk to them. We ask them questions like I've got written here, and try to get that knowledge transfer taking place. We talk about how salt actually works, the concentrations in a brine, and how the colder it gets, salt loses effectiveness. And then we talk to our seasoned employees, and I tell them, I'm like, look, I'm just one guy who does this once a year. It's all I need. The new seeds or the older employees. Knowledge transfer is the key for success. There's a lot of new operators that were certified. Please take them under your wing, because I'm only one person that can do this one time. We need you all to pass on that knowledge. And in closing, I know I'm trying to go fast. We're going to continue with internal and external partnering and training. Continued research into resource alternatives. We actually have a couple of ongoing projects with alternative water sources for brine and things of that nature, and just continued resilience in the face of adversity, meaning COVID hit and we had to really rearrange the way we were doing things. And we had a lot of new employees. We had a lot of ice. We had less traffic. We had to figure out ways to make it work, but we didn't revert back to what we were doing 5 to 10 years ago. So it was actually still a success. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Scott, for that informative presentation. There's so much great information there.
I've got so much more. I tried.
Thank you. And as folks are thinking about this, if you have questions for Scott or any of his information, you want to learn more, feel free to type your questions in the chat box. I'm going to touch base with Carlington and see, were there any sort of clarifying questions that came through on the chat box?
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on to our second speaker, who's Michael Wyand. He is the Watershed Restoration Specialist with the City of Gaithersburg. Michael, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. I see your slides coming through clear on my end, and so go ahead and proceed with your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Heidi. I don't know, Scott, if I'm going to be able to get done with my presentation as well, because I tend to be a talker. But I first wanted to start by saying just how grateful I am for ICPRB to host this webinar. You know, the organization itself does such great research in the Potomac Basin. To me, it's almost like you're all like the water quality CDC version of the Potomac Basin. And I like to use a lot of the information coming from your organization to help guide me in what I'm doing in the Gaithersburg community. So thank you. Also want to recognize some of our co-presenters here today. Scott, excellent presentation. Susan, I can't wait to see what's going on in your organization. And Emily, who is one of our partners at Gaithersburg with the Saltwatch program, a super awesome thing that's going on. And I think Saltwatch is going to be one of those kind of community science projects that just blows up in the region. So if this is kind of a new familiar topic to you, then definitely check it out some more after this. So what I'm going to talk about today is a little bit about kind of creating a community of mindful salters in Gaithersburg. And really what that's all about is giving people a sense of place. And that's not just through our salting initiative. We try to give a sense of place to all of our environmental programs because we recognize that stewardship derives from having people believe that, you know, I have this sense of place within my community. So to give a little bit about my positionality where I come from Western New York in a place called Hornell, and it's a very rural town, and I did a lot of agricultural work out there. And I came down to Maryland and did a lot of agricultural work for the Montgomery County Soil Conservation District. And then I switched over to the urban side and did watershed health stuff now for the city of Gaithersburg. So that is all to say, I don't really consider myself a salt expert. I'm more of an underwriter of change and a person who runs a lot of interference on any of the haters out there. And I just love talking about these programs. So, you know, my journey in life, I accumulated some schooling, and I want to give a shout out to the Seneca land and the Piscataway land tribal people, because, you know, native land acknowledgements are super important, and stewardship runs so deep in their culture that I'm trying to do a better job of making sure that we incorporate Indigenous people into our you know, educational and outreach efforts wherever we go. So what do I do at the city? I do lots of outreach and education stuff, and it's for the primary purpose of meeting our MS4 permit, which is a regulatory kind of requirement that all cities kind of go and do these certain amount of activities and report back. But I'd like to think that I'm here for a higher purpose, and that you know, I've been so blessed to have some awesome watershed experiences, and really my ultimate goal is to make sure that the experiences that I have are provided to the community members and to all people in our community, regardless if it's someone who's been here for 30 plus years or an individual just passing through. I want to meet them where they're at in their lives and provide them an opportunity to get involved and to see nature. So what we're trying to do is creating a community of mindful salters. And I like the term mindfulness because it's kind of reflective of you have to be aware of what is going on, especially with the weather. We know weather is kind of unpredictable. I mean, how many times have we looked down at our phone and said it's going to snow, and then, you know, the next thing we know, it's bright and sunny outside. So it requires, to reduce salt in our communities, it requires to be mindful. And we have some guiding principles that we follow by understanding that road salt is critical to public safety, but there can be too much of a good thing, and it's all about being timely and accurate in how you apply it. So some context, you know, the city treats about 230 lane miles. We also have 950 tons of road salt per year that we put down on average, and we have between 300 and 500 per lane mile. So, you know, being mindful stems from being aware, and being aware is recognizing how much that you're actually putting down. And this is a map that shows all the different jurisdiction responsibilities out there. We have our state roads, our county roads, our city roads, and our private roads. And we all need to have kind of a mental model of what's going on to help create that shared vision between all our different groups on how to tackle the fact that we need to use less salt, but also ensure public safety. So there's lots of things that we're doing to help reduce salt in our area. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but I'm going to pick out 2 of them. We have our Saltwatch partnership that I think is unique to us, and that's all about the residents go out with their chloride strips and measure how much chloride is actually in the water. So again, we're collecting data. We also have our contractor salt drop-off program that allows contractors at the end of the season to come back and deposit the salt that they've been using in our salt barn for free, so they have somewhere to put it. We have our snow rodeo. This is one of our applicators on the right, Larry, and we have our junior mayor, Abri. And this is an awesome event because it's training for the applicators. They go out and they drive around and do different maneuvers, but it's also done in like a contest format. So it's a way of making things a lot of fun and then getting people together to give them that sense of place that I'm talking about. We also have our Saltwatch partnership, and these are our Saltwatch kits that we've been giving out to residents. It says "Stay Fresh Gaithersburg." I love that, and it's super fashionable. It's like a fanny pack that you can like put over your shoulder, like everyone's doing nowadays. But it has all the stuff you need in it. You go out, you test it, instructions for uploading, and then we have outreach material that helps us out with our MS4 permit, and it talks about illicit discharges. And we have our Paint the Plow program, where G Parks is leading that. And what's wonderful about this Paint the Plow program, we did four plows this year, but it all stems from the groups of individuals that are coming together to actually do the work. We had the Benjamin Gaither Center, which is a senior center. We had the Starbucks team. We also had two youth centers. And what's super powerful about this is we're doing environmental programming at the intersection of social services. And that's going out and meeting people in the community, in my eyes. And especially with a team like Starbucks, that's a group of individuals that I just don't typically work with partnership-wise because they're like a big private organization. But that's why also too it's super important for corporate social responsibility to be embedded in a lot of these organizations that we do business with in our community, because it allows their employees to come out and to do these partnerships with us. And those partnerships are what create that sense of community. I mean, when individuals from these projects now go into that Starbucks, they know the employees, and the employees are saying hi to them and shouting out their names. And that is what I'm talking about. That conversation itself is that sense of community, which leads to more stewardship, which leads to more, watershed experiences out there. So it's like this nice big feedback loop. So all of that together, we brought all these things together, and we hosted a Jingle Jubilee event, which is it's an annual thing at the city of Gaithersburg. It's a tree lighting ceremony, and we brought the stormwater group was out there, which was myself. We had the applicators. We had Saltwatch. We had the Starbucks team. We had a turtle. We had a crab. We had kids out there enjoying all of this stuff. And it's just a great way to bond over this stuff and not to have it talk about it in a polarizing way. And this is some more pictures from the event. And one of my favorite ones is we have Santa here repping the Stay Fresh Gaithersburg Saltwatch kit. I mean, what more can you ask for? But there is more. And my favorite part, I think, is that at the event we had so many cultures and diversity represented that it was super awesome, because at the end, right before they flipped the switch, they had all the performances, and they announced over the speakers about the Saltwatch program, and we're talking about it and making people aware. And it's just a way that we kind of bind it and bring the community together through being artful, through recognizing culture, and through involving people and giving them a spot to have a conversation about this stuff. So that brings me kind of to the end here, where I believe we all can make a difference, but really it's together that we can make the change. And it's about understanding the different viewpoints that we come from and recognizing that it doesn't have to be either or. It's like we can do these things together. And a super big shout out to all of our operation teams. And the picture on the far right is a gentleman named Mark Scafidi, and he's one of those guys at the city of Gaithersburg who makes everything kind of happen behind the scenes, and has been super supportive of all of this stuff. And we could not do it without him and the support of his team and all of that. So that's kind of what I have to say. At the end here, we have lots of great things we're doing at Gaithersburg. And if you want to keep up to date with it, check out and sign up for our Green in Gaithersburg quarterly newsletter, where we'll be sending out more information. We also have an Izaak Walton League kind of Gaithersburg specific website where you can go on and see where the different monitorings are recording, and we have a jurisdictional roadmap so you know which street you're on. And then, you know, what's coming up next? We want to work on cross-generational events, mixing seniors with the youth. We want to celebrate water heritage, and we have the art of trash grabbing coming up. And I think that's going to be the next big thing, but I don't want to give out any secrets about it. So if you want to stay up to date with what that is, definitely sign up for Green in Gaithersburg. And thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Michael, for the fantastic presentation. I just want to touch base with Carlington and see if there are any clarifying questions from the chat that we should get to right now.
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just remind folks that as the questions arise to you during our panel speakers, please just type those in the chat and we'll get to the substantive kind of ones at the end, or we'll stop and do the clarifying ones in between. So let's move on to our third speaker. She is Susan Miller, the Public Affairs Officer with Fairfax Water. Susan, welcome and thank you for joining us. So please, I see your screen is coming through clear on my end, and go ahead and proceed with your presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Heidi, and good morning, everyone. Glad to be here, or good afternoon, I guess it is now. Glad to be here to talk about Fairfax Water's efforts on winter salt, and great to hear from the other agencies as well. So I'll go ahead and get started. First, I'll start off with some background information on Fairfax Water. So we're located in Fairfax County, Virginia. We sell water to about 2 million retail and wholesale customers in Northern Virginia. We produce about 167 million gallons of water a day. We have direct customers, about 280,000 direct retail customers, and we have about 475 employees at Fairfax Water. And here's a map of our service area. In the lighter blue area here is Fairfax County, so those are all of our direct customers. And then in these blue areas here on the other counties in Loudoun, Prince William, Woodbridge, Dale City, Alexandria, and the towns of Vienna and Herndon as well. Those are our wholesale customers. So we produce the water, sell it to those customers, and then they sell that to their customers. So a little background information from the water side of the winter salt issue. Fairfax Water, we have 2 drinking water treatment plants. One is on the Potomac River, the Portobello Water Treatment Plant. And then our second source of water is the Occoquan Reservoir, and that is our Griffith Water Treatment Plant. And then I have some pictures here of the watershed. So this is just to get an idea of the watersheds that we're dealing with, and all of the potential areas where salt could get into the source water. Now, what have we been seeing so far with the sodium trends specifically? So sodium is one of the components of salt. So this graph here is showing the changes from 1980. We were running about 5 parts per million of water, up to 1999 here, where you're running about at 25. So about 4 to 5 times the amount of sodium in the water as there was almost 4 years ago now. So that's what we're seeing in the drinking water at this time. So that's source water that is coming into our treatment plants. Whoops. There we go. So we've got increased sodium levels in the water, but what does that mean for us? So these increasing salt trends can result in some health issues for those who are on sodium restricted diets. Eventually, the salt levels get high enough that customers can taste salt in the water. We have started to see at times when there's been high salt use for, say, a larger storm or something, customers will call and say they're noticing that the water tastes saltier than it normally does. And of course, there's the impacts on the environment that we're already seeing in some cases here. We're not the only ones that are seeing increased salt levels here in the DC area. This is something that's happening nationally as well at different levels. So it's something that's quite common now, and is a trend that's being tracked throughout the region. There's various different types of salts that are used. There's sodium chloride, magnesium chloride, calcium chloride, bromide salts, and all of those can potentially negatively impact the source water. And the key thing here is our typical drinking water and wastewater treatment processes cannot remove these salts from the water. So that's very important. The best way to deal with this problem is to get that trend going back down so that we don't have to change our treatment processes that we currently use. And as stated before, there definitely needs to be a balance on this issue. I think this is where this becomes a really complex issue. Winter salt is so important for the community in terms of keeping people safe when they're traveling to school, to work, and on the go, because as we've seen so far the past few weeks of this year, we've just had a lot of little winter weather happening here and there, and it's very important for safety. But we also need to make sure we keep our drinking water source protection safe as well. So once Fairfax Water, we've acknowledged the problem and we're saying, okay, how are we going to handle this? We developed a salt strategy plan. Here are the different targets that we have. One was to create a Fairfax Water salt team. So this is a team that we brought together for all of us to, from different disciplines at Fairfax Water to talk about the problem and what can we do to help solve it. Enhance the community education, advocate for regulatory and legislative changes, conduct and support research, lead and support regional initiatives, monitor the impacts on Fairfax Water and the water supply, and then enhance our source water protection efforts. So here's our more specific strategies in terms of enhancing community education. And I'll mostly in the next slides be sticking with the first one. So support community education and impact on the water supply. I think one of the biggest things here is that people in the area just don't know that this is a problem. This is something that's been slowly coming over the past several years, and it's just something they didn't know about. So just letting people know that this is happening and it's a problem we can all solve is a good thing. So we've worked really hard the past couple of years to start increasing our engagement and education with our customers, young and old, to help them understand what the issue is and why it's important and how we can all work to help solving it. So some of our outreach materials that we've used is our customer newsletter. This was from 2020, but I believe we did it again in fall of 2021. Was just this customer newsletter goes out to all of our customers at Fairfax County. So pretty much anyone that has a water bill in Fairfax County gets this newsletter. So this was a good way to get out the winter salt smart messaging to let people know this is a problem and we need to do kind of a balanced use of winter salt going forward. And then our website, I've got the link there and the QR code if you want to use that as well. But we beefed up our website in terms of winter salt to use some of the messaging that we've created and also some of the messaging we've created with the Virginia DEQ SAMS effort as well. And social media has definitely been a great tool to reach customers about this topic, especially when you see a snowstorm's coming or it's actively snowing. That seems to be, the chatter that's going on social media everywhere is talking about the snow and how are the roads and how are the sidewalks and schools. So that's a great opportunity for us to jump on that bandwagon and message about this topic as well. And we try to make sure that we're, messaging on the topic, but also being balanced about it as well. We're not just saying, don't use winter salt, just use it smartly. And probably one of my favorite outreach items that we have here is our Water Ninja comic book series. We have a series of 5 comic books that follow the water ninjas as they investigate and solve different water-related problems. And we thought this was a great topic for our water ninjas to tackle because it's a complicated topic and comic books are a great way to kind of break all of the different parts of this problem down into, a simple thing that we can learn about. So here is our comic book. I've got some QR codes there, and when they send the slides, you can go to our link there. Here's some more information from the comic book. We've got our little chemistry breakdown of salt and then a quick household guide that folks can use as well. And then this was a fun one we did. We wanted a quick experiment to show how salt increased salt in the water impacts plant life. So in this case, we used spinach in water and added salt to it, and you could see that the leaves changed as you increase the amount of salt in the water. So that was a great opportunity we had with our Girl Scout group here. We also do a lot of regional communication efforts with the Virginia DEQ, the Salt Management Strategy, or SAMS, also with NVRC. The NVRC is actually the home of the SAMS effort now.
Susan, this is
And
Heidi.
some more.
2 minutes remaining in your time.
Okay, cool. And some more regional communication efforts. We helped start a new program that we call Winter Salt Wednesdays. And so this was an effort that we started during the winter. So every Wednesday, we get water utilities and other agencies in the area to all message about winter salt, so that we kind of amplify the message by all doing it on Wednesdays. We use the same hashtag. We've created a set of customizable graphics. We've got some boilerplate text and the hashtag set up so that they can just kind of plug and play and use those texts and graphics on their own social media platforms to help amplify our message. And we definitely see that people are using that Winter Salt Wednesday. It's something that can be used not only in Fairfax County or Virginia, but throughout the region as well. All right, and that's all I have for now. And then at the end here, I just wanted to let everybody know our Fairfax Water Stakeholder Outreach Grant Program is now open. If you go to fairfaxwater.org/grants, you can learn more information. And through this program, we have grants available to organizations who do education on environment, water supply, water quality monitoring, watersheds, etc. So if you're interested, please feel free to check that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan, for the informative presentation. Carlington, I'll just check in and see, were there any clarifying questions from the chat for Susan?
Yes, Amy Yolande from Luan Wildlife Conservancy wanted to know if we have archives of these newsletters. I think Renee posted a link in the chat with the archives. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, and I can post the links to some other items in the chat as well, so you all have those easily to use.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. All right, so let's move on to our final panel speaker for the afternoon. Our final speaker is Emily Bialowitz. She is the Chesapeake Bay Monitoring Outreach Coordinator with the Izaak Walton League of America. Emily, welcome and thank you for joining us. I see your slides on the screen. They're coming through clear. So please go ahead with your presentation.
Thanks, Heidi. Yeah, today we're talking about Winter Saltwatch, which thanks for the preview before, Michael. So this is a national program, but we have a lot of participation locally. So we started Winter Saltwatch a few years back because this was the view at our driveway in Gaithersburg on Muddy Branch Road. The pile of salt in the lower left corner was sitting on top of a storm drain, which goes right into the Muddy Branch. And one of our clean water fellow at the time, he got really fed up with it, and we checked the salt level, the chloride level in our stream in Muddy Branch, and we found it to be off the charts. And we're like, if this is a problem here, it's got to be a problem everywhere where there's winter, where they put salt down. So that is how Saltwatch was born. But it's also meant that we've had a lot of focus locally because it touched us first. So what Saltwatch involves is that people request a Saltwatch kit. What you get in a Saltwatch kit is 4 Hawk chloride test strips, which measure from 30 to 600 parts per million, which is a pretty good range for determining if water is going to be toxic to aquatic life, acutely or chronically toxic to aquatic life. We provide sample testing instructions, data uploading instructions to the platform that we use, Water Reporter, and a conversion chart to be able to read your chloride test strip. And if you're lucky, we might throw in some fun stickers for you. So our goal with Winter Salt Watch is mostly to raise awareness in the general public about that connection between salt that they'll see on the road or that they're putting down on, you know, their sidewalk, their walkway, and local stream health. Secondly, it is to identify chloride hotspots in fresh water. This isn't always a top priority for monitoring. So volunteers feel empowered that they can be the ones to sort of do this first level of screening for chloride hotspots in their area. And then we have also gotten our volunteers to start advocating for smarter application of road salt by sharing their results, and we have some resources for them to share locally with private landowners and with their local government. This is what a typical Saltwatch report looks like. Someone takes a picture by their stream with their strip they just used and their conversion chart and some background information. This is geotagged. We can tell where it is. We can read the strip, and it all goes into our database. We give folks 4 test strips per kit. So we ask them to go out before any winter storms, typically in the fall, to get a baseline reading. And then around a storm, after salt has been applied to the roads, and then after the first warm day or rainstorm after a snow event, and then after a rain event or in the spring, when there's that thaw and that runoff. This is just some example of why we ask folks to get a baseline reading. Here in Cabin John Creek in Maryland, this is a pre-storm baseline reading is 123 parts per million chloride, but after the storm, it is off the chart. And on this next slide, you can see this is from one of our volunteers, Kurt, who I know is on this call right now. On the left is our standard Saltwatch strip, which you can see is off the chart, and it's in that 30 to 600 part per million range. So we know it's over 610 parts per million, but there are also high range strips out there. And this strip shows that the same water sample was almost 3,000 parts per million chloride. So when I say we're looking at thresholds, that's really what we're doing. We're just seeing that those chloride levels are quite high, but not necessarily as high as they can be measured. We are a national program. We started really going full force in 2018, 2019, and this is most of the country where salt is used to treat snowy roads. And we have quite a bit of participation, and you can see we have a lot of focus in the Mid-Atlantic in our area of the East Coast. And just our results from last year, you can see for the DC region that almost half of our results that we got from volunteers were toxic, which is over 230 parts per million. That's that EPA chronic exposure level for harm to aquatic life. And then this is from one of our sites on the Muddy Branch. We have some very gung-ho volunteers with the Muddy Branch Alliance, and they found that that chronic level is happening in Muddy Branch, that it hovers around 230 parts per million or higher. This is for the better part of a year, this data. And then these are our results for the last, this is up to date. So now since we started in 2018, and you can see a lot of red and yellow dots, which just means they're higher than expected background chloride levels for our region. On our website, we provide some really basic rules of thumb around salt for our volunteers and some advocacy templates, basically. You know, some rules of thumb about like you don't have to feel the crunch under your foot for salt to do its job, that de-icer labels might be misleading, that the temperature is important for when you use salt. And then we have some templates for writing a letter to the editor. We have some flyers to hand out. We have some sample letters for government officials. And we find that our volunteers have used some of these. This is from one of our most enthusiastic volunteers who has really taken this and run with it. Carl, he's part of the Muddy Branch Alliance. This is just from yesterday, no, 2 days ago. This opinion piece was in the Washington Post. And we really appreciate this sort of enthusiasm from our volunteers, and that, you know, we can't be everywhere, but that, you know, the voice of our volunteers is quite loud. And then new this year, this is something that Michael mentioned already, but we've been working with the city of Gaithersburg to do a city-specific Gaithersburg Winter Salt Watch. That means that we've been going to community events. We've been doing Gaithersburg-specific Winter Salt Watch, putting up flyers at community centers and libraries, showing up at farmers markets to hand out kits and to talk to people directly about the impact of salt. This is that.
2 minutes remaining. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Heidi. This is that plowing, Paint the Plow event that Michael was talking about. So it's great to have this. I mean, we feel really lucky to have this sort of partnership from a municipality that we haven't had before. So it's great to not be adversarial, but to have it be a partnership. And we have partners across the country, but we do have a number of partners in the DMV area, several of whom have some folks on the call today. And what it means to be a member is just that there's sort of a coordinated effort in your group to be monitoring. Maybe it means there is some financial involvement, but it doesn't have to. It probably means that we've provided kits and that we've asked you to make sure that the data gets back to us and to coordinate where monitoring is happening in your watershed. So what can folks do? We ask our volunteers to keep monitoring and sharing their results. If you use up your kit, you can share your results with us. You can also always ask for another kit. We have a set of kits that we're trying to give out and have used and have the data shared by the end of the year. So we still have some supply. Spreading the word, telling neighbors and local businesses about smarter salt use. Reading the packaging really carefully on salt, and reporting oversalting to your city or county. That is something that a lot of people want to do. They ask us who exactly to call. Depending on where they are, we don't always have a clear answer. So that's something we're still working on. And if you're part of an organization and you want to become a Saltwatch partner, you can reach out to us. We have a great website, saltwatch.org. You can reach out to become a partner. If you have questions, you can email us, saltwatch@iwla.org.
Thank you, Emily, for the great presentation. Carlington, are there any clarifying questions specifically for Emily from the chat?
No.
All right, so I want to thank all 4 of our speakers for the very informative presentations. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carlington, who's going to moderate the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thanks, Heidi. So I will jump right into it for the sake of time. The first question will go to Emily. And David Brower would like to know how much does it cost to give out test strip program supplies to the public each year? Like, how much does that cost?
So the raw supplies plus postage is about $5 to $6, but we say $10 per kit, including our time. So that's how much it costs for us.
Okay, thank you. So while we're talking about the next question, will go to Scott. This question is from Susan Thomas, and first, she'd like to thank you for a great presentation, and she will definitely take a look at the SMP. She would like to know, do employees or contractors generally do the same roads? And have you noticed any difference in salt application on the different routes?
Okay. Yes. Sometimes our contractors are with our operators, but sometimes they have routes of their own, and there are route supervisors that have oversight of the contractors. But I can tell you that they are the most egregious offender of the abuse. And what we make them do is we actually track the scoops that go on every truck, not only with a truck sheet, but a loader sheet. We take tag numbers and track what goes in and what comes back. And we also do that with our own people. The good thing about our trucks is we've got AVL capabilities with spreader controls that can actually track that, and we can set up geofences with limitations, and we can really turn down the hydraulics with the augers and spreaders, the hydraulic to the augers and spreaders, and kind of control that if we want. The problem with the contractors is a system like that is tens of thousands of dollars. And in order for them to have that, our rates are set up so that they have manual controls, and our budgets really don't allow right now for us to be able to pay them the extra hourly rates or to pay them retainers or minimum guarantees that are going to give us that kind of equipment. That's right now, but we do track what they do, what goes in and what comes back out. And we also go through a preseason inspection where we require them to have everything has to be calibrated. We check it at the beginning of the season. In the contract states that we can stop with them and check it at any time. So whenever they come to get loaded for a storm, we can spot check their calibration. There's side boards on the tops of the trucks, but also on the tailgates themselves. There's our flaps that keep, that's the little pile that you saw was probably, somebody mentioned it earlier, was they stopped on the side of the road and they either had the load, it came over the top of the tailgate, or they didn't have their flaps installed. So when they were putting a load or shifting the load back to the spreader box, it probably leaked out, and it was like, we call them ant hills, leaked out on the side of the road. Usually if we see that, we'll send them back to clean it up. But yeah, they're our most egregious offender. But we've also got the clamp or hooks in them, because we've got notice of unsatisfactory performances in the contract, to where if we catch them overutilizing the resource, abusing it, trucks aren't calibrated, like doing anything else, anything that's going to be detrimental and waste salt, that we can actually give them a notice of unsatisfactory performance. And after 2 of those, the contract is terminated. So okay. And we can also take money from them, not necessarily liquidated damages, but we pay them a preseason retainer, a minimum payment guarantee, and a postseason retainer. And any infractions we can deduct monies that are owed to them. And like I said, on a second infraction, we can actually terminate the contract. So
right. Thanks, Scott. That was great explanation. So we have 2 kind of follow-up question. The first one goes to Michael, and it's from Bill Spargo. Do we use street sweepers immediately after salt application to limit salt getting into the watershed, specifically the Chesapeake Bay watershed, or can we do that?
Yes, we do. There are actually site leaders this year going around kind of monitoring certain routes. And if salt is found up, a street sweeper will go out and pick it up. And we also always get phone calls. We have a great relationship with the community. So, you know, when we hear something about it, we go and pick it up as quick as we can.
Okay, awesome. And next question is for Susan. You've answered it in the chat, but I don't know if you want to expand on your answer a little bit. But David Brower wanted to know, is there any way to treat excess salt content in water supplies in our intake in the near future?
Not in the near future. So the way our treatment plans for drinking water and wastewater are set up is to treat fresh water only, not salt water. So to treat for salt water would require to switch both these types of plants all over to desalinization plants. And that would be quite an extensive changeover and expensive to our ratepayers as well. So, you know, we're not at that point yet, but that's why we want to, you know, get the word out there, let people know what's going on so we can get that trend line going back down. Okay,
thanks. And also, next question is for Susan as well. It's from Gerard Beard from NRCS, and he would like to know, have you noticed increased sediment loading along with the time period of increased salt event, or is increased sediment during the winter versus different seasons? Have you noticed any increase in sediment during winter months?
I would say it's not specific to winter or any season in particular, but increased sediment can be found when there's increased precipitation of any kind. So any type of rain, snow, melting will, you know, lead to more runoff, and you can see more sediment in the water at that time.
Okay, thank you very much. So there are still some more questions coming in the chat. So I'll try to go through them as quickly as I can. So the next question would go to Scott. And Kristen would like to know if you can explain a little bit more about the relationship between traffic levels and salt application.
Sure. So basically, if you were to take a piece of salt and lay it on the asphalt and it just sits in one spot, as it gets wet, it will start to dilute. But the problem with that is it's just spot specific. As traffic works granular salt and it chunks it down from a larger particle to like a fine or a dust, it actually starts to dilute with the water and spread across the roadway according to the crown of the road. So the less traffic you have, like highly traveled roads like the interstates, believe it or not, are easier to maintain than you have a road that has a very low ADT, because you just don't have the traffic to make the salt actually work. So even when I was plowing, I preferred to be on the interstate because we could make a plow train or make a pass and kind of sit back for 2 or 3 hours and let the salt work, let the traffic work. Where like a two-way road in a very rural area, you don't have any traffic that's going to actually turn the salt, the granular salt, into an actual brine and actually help it break that bond between the snow and the pavement.
Thanks. The next two questions are the two last questions that we have come from Kurt Moser. So would Kurt Moser like to turn on the camera and ask the questions directly? Because I have a feeling you may have some follow-up.
Sure.
Sure.
Hi, and thank you. Hopefully you can hear me. One of the questions I have is whether TMDLs are a good approach. I know that Accotink Creek, they were working on or had proposed a TMDL for Accotink. I don't know if it's been done elsewhere, and I don't know if people feel it's a positive approach. The data that we have for 4 Mile Run shows that the chloride concentrations go very high after any kind of precipitation event or salting. And a lot of that is people applying on sidewalks or their driveways or private parking lots and businesses. And it's not, I don't think the lion's share of it is actually application on the roads. I think it's actually private homeowners, landowners, and other folks who are trying to avoid liability. I don't know if TMDLs are a tool that people believe is useful for this.
Can I talk? I actually, when we met with MDE, State Highway was, I'm gonna be honest with you, State Highway was the first that actually MDE came to, because of the size of our organization and the amount of equipment that we have, and what they perceived was the actual impervious surface that we were responsible for in the state of Maryland. And when they actually came to us and they actually started researching the amount of the lane miles that we have and the square footage or the square yards of impervious surface that we have, it was actually determined that of the, I think it's like 430 some thousand acres of impervious surface across Maryland, State Highway only maintains about 5 to 6% of that pervious surface. So we, like, literally, we because we're always on the news and because we're always at the forefront. And when they came to us, they were like, they were pointing the finger. And then when they actually realized like what we were actually responsible for, they were like, oh my gosh. So then that's when we started working with them. We actually discussed TMDLs in a couple of the watersheds, the critical watersheds. And they realized that a TMDL that has a steadfast number that's going to limit the application of what we can do is going to be detrimental to the public, because it's just like anything. Like if you try to build something without a foundation, it's going to fail. So what we decided was to collectively work together to decrease year after year after year after year with a slow decrease. So not only did the public learn how to drive differently, they actually, it became known that, hey, we're doing the right thing. And I can tell you that to this day, because of that approach of that gradual reduction and getting to where to accomplishing our goal, we actually get the 9 of the 10 letters that we used to get that used to be for undersalting and not having snow on the roads are now, why are we leaving the roads white after a storm? So the first thing that we did was change the mindset internally. Then we changed the mindset of the public slowly to actually kind of let them view the way that we were doing things without putting TMDLs in the MS4s. So I'm not saying it can't happen, but I think that if you approach this the right way and realize that salt isn't bad, it's actually falling out of the environment, and that it's called a wet deposition. It's actually in the environment, and millions of pounds of it fall out of the environment every year. It's just when you introduce levels that are unsustainable in areas where it wasn't before, i.e. you build a road through somewhere where a stream was, and then you just go all out with the salt instead of actually managing what you're doing. I can tell you this, mag chloride, calcium chloride, all of those things are super expensive, and they're super for like infrastructure, they will tear it apart. But salt, from a cost perspective and from a usage perspective, if you do it the right way, it's really the best bang for the buck as far as State Highway is concerned. We just have to learn how to use it in the most efficient way possible. That's not going to be detrimental, but still take public safety, put that at the forefront. So that's kind of what we've done as far as the TMDL approach.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, we're almost out of time, but I'll ask the follow-up question from David Brower to Emily. How many kits did you send out this year, and what is your projection for the next year?
Sure. So we, our year is a season. We straddle the year. So since this fall, we've sent out about 2,500 kits. That's to individuals and to groups across the country. But we're not done sending out kits. People request more kits every day. And we have, I think, 2,000 more that are available to send out this year. And so if you want a kit, you can request one. We have more.
All right, thank you. So we are already 9 minutes past the hour, and we promised our panelists that we won't go more than 10 minutes over. So I'd like to respect that and thank everyone for joining us today, and especially the panelists for taking time out of their busy schedule to share with us. So this webinar is being held as part of a series. We held the first one back in May of 2021, and to introduce folks to the Chesapeake Bay Healthy Watershed Assessment Tool. And today we discuss winter salt management in the basin. Very wonderful discussion, if I may add. So our next event is expected to be held later this spring, and we welcome your ideas and topics for the next event. So please look out for a follow-up email from us with some post-webinar questions. And yes, please feel free to reach out to us if you have further questions. And we will try to coordinate with the panelists if you guys have other questions and concerns that we weren't able to address today. I'd like to turn back over to Heidi if, as we come to the end of this session.
Yes, I'll just take the time to echo what Carlington said. Thank you, everybody, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you to the panelists and for everybody for joining on today. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.